Thank you, Mike, Laura, and Cassie for the great material. Now we will share some strategies to start managing fatigue in your companies. There is no one intervention or solution that's going to work in all cases. So, Mike, can you kick us off with that?
In closing with my summary, what I'd like to do is just highlight that we need to look beyond the flaws in the worker to find the flaws in the system. A lot of times we hide behind this notion of human error. And if somebody falls asleep while they're doing their job, or they're really tired and they make a mistake, we have to look beyond the mistake. We have to look beyond that action. Why did they take that shortcut? Why did they fall asleep? Maybe it's because they put in overtime. Maybe it's because a baby kept them awake all night. Maybe it's because the work schedule has them working during nighttime hours when they're going to be at higher risk to make a mistake. So we need to go beyond the flaws in the worker and find the flaws in the system in order to really mitigate the risk. We also need to start looking at our existing hazards, because fatigue in and of itself can be a hazard, but what I really want you to do is look at all the jobs you currently have and where there's already hazards and risks. If you add fatigue to the equation, how much more risk is being presented to that worker now? How much more is it being elevated? So we need to look at all of our hazards through that fatigue lens. And finally, we really need to start asking ourselves some tough questions. So when you have a worker who is tired and he's rubbing his eyes and he's slow moving and he's yawning and you know he has 4 more hours on shift in a safety sensitive position, what do you do? When that worker shows up tired to work, or when he's in the middle of a shift and he's got a critical task, what do you do? What policies do you have in place? What procedures can supervisors follow? Or is it really just everyone flying by the seat of their pants, which is what we typically find in a lot of the organizations right now? So we need to start asking some of those tough questions. Are we going to allow for napping? Are we going to have a rest and recovery period? Are we going to just dismiss this employee? It might be your best employee. Find out what are your available options and make the right choices. And thank you for your time.
So overall, the main takeaway message in terms of intervening with physical fatigue is to target the intervention to the source. So we want to focus on the work tasks that are performed and implement good ergonomics in those tasks to reduce the forces, reduce the repetitions, and reduce any of the awkward postures, because that's going to allow us to minimize fatigue development. We want to consider appropriate rest break allocations and variability in the postures, and choose the intervention that's going to be most appropriate for the type of fatigue and the location of discomfort that the workers are feeling. And then an important piece, once any intervention is put into place, is to go back and evaluate the effectiveness of that intervention. We often forget to close the loop and come back and see whether the strategies we've put in have been effective solutions.
So my final tips for today would just be to establish trust through good communication and a good safety culture. So it's important to keep all stakeholders involved and informed throughout the planning, implementation, and the delivery of results. So that means measuring baseline so that you can assess the change that your intervention has. And also measuring a baseline can help you identify fatigue hotspots so that you can really target your intervention once you know your fatigue risk. Then you deliver the intervention and then make sure that you're measuring the results to assess the success and also any potential barriers that come up. And then most importantly, you need to keep repeating this process because safety itself is a continuous process. Thank you.
Thank you, folks. The team at DORN works with multiple organizations to focus on employees' body, behaviors, and workplace environment. One of the key outcomes of our services is to drive an impact on fatigue. The strategies we recommend, in addition to what you heard from our other panelists, are hands-on manual therapy and self-care techniques, addressing the work environment from an ergonomic standpoint, and injury prevention programs, including looking at an industrial athlete program. And there's a link here to a webinar that we held a month ago on industrial athletes. The results that we see are improvement in sleep patterns of 33%. And you heard earlier the importance of getting enough rest. Medication reduction of 44%, along with improvements in productivity, morale, through employees taking ownership of their own healthcare. We hope you've enjoyed the presentations and discussions today. The goal of any program should be to empower your team to take personal ownership, To do so, this panel suggests you look to educate your employees on the importance of proper sleep, rest, and ways to address fatigue, and engage them with other company-sponsored solutions you've heard from our speakers today.